Yeah, I think it's something we've both encountered perhaps in separate cohorts that in when trying to engage on anything related to the election and anything related to criticism, how quickly it descends into exactly that retort. The if you're not with us, you must be against us assumption.
Yeah, it's a clinginess rooted, I'm assuming, in fear, like where the and it shows up in more subtle ways, but yeah, it seems to be really aggressive in the terms of presidential politics and the election. Like I have to cling so tightly to this that it seems like um using, I don't know, the external projection to validate one's own opinion. Like I
Yeah,
the only way, like I need this to be reinforced because
yeah.
almost receive it weirdly as like a lack of trust for one's own opinion. Like because
I think so
just
too.
gonna
Yeah,
cling to this instead of actually having a conversation about it.
yeah. And if I was going to be more magnanimous, I could even say it's a lack of uh, trust for one's own opinion, or it's an increased faith for collective wisdom.
I
You know
like
what I
that.
mean?
I like
Where
that.
because I'm trying to figure out like why I see this disparate this if you're not with us, you're against us phenomenon. I see it on both the right and the left, but I see it a lot more on the left. Now, again, as I've said many times in the show, most of the people I know are on the left, so I just don't see as much of uh, uh, like right wing extremists or whatever. I know it happens. I think it happened just this past week. Like Joe Rogan had said some positive things about RFK, and then people were like, "Oh, he's endorsing RFK," which he wasn't. And there was at least some people on Twitter or whatever who were like, furious. And Donald J. Trump was like, let's see how many boos he gets at the next UFC event, or you know what I mean? That sort of that happens. I've heard it, I've seen it. But in terms of when I go and engage people in conversation, I've been accused immediately of being like a Trump supporter anytime I express criticisms for Biden or Harris, and that has happened to me dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of times. But I was like, but since especially I would say in the extreme left, there's and even just generally on the left, there's a inclination towards collectivism, and that's both a positive and a negative. But because of that inclination, then that means that there's a higher value placed on, hey, what are we all thinking right now? As opposed to the right, I think has a larger collection of individualists or libertarians who are kind of a little bit more just like, leave me alone. So then they're not as affected by like the group. They actually kind of want to get away from the group, and they kind of really don't want anything to do with the group. So
It's
there's
a
just there's a larger chunk of zealots in both of those areas, kind of individual and collectivists on those two sides. And so
it's
maybe
a
that's why I haven't
conundrum.
run into it.
Yeah, it's a conundrum because I've noticed, just at least in the context of one friend who, on if you just look at her Facebook, it's super binary,
Yeah.
super basically at the childish end of the spectrum of degrading Trump, um,
Yeah.
and uplifting, Kamala and lots of other progressive, issues.
Yeah.
And then I had a conversation with her in person the other day, and the complexity emerged. Where she's
Yeah.
working in prison reform and she's around a lot of abolitionists, and they're questioning Kamala's, record as the Attorney General of California, rightfully so. And it's just like, oh wow. And I told her, I'm like, this is the kind of conversation I wish we were having. I almost
Yeah.
said I wish we could have, right? Like I get caught up in it too. It's like
Yeah. Sure.
we can't have this because it's like, my God,
Yeah.
like we can't let a crack in, I think is the energy that,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Which is so much of it is, again, as we've talked about so many times, is fear based. But and then for me, from the outside, because I'm not quite in that, I'm near that bubble, but I'm not in that bubble. Is like that freaks me out. It freaked me out about churches I was at, like that sort of thing where anyone. It's the opposite of. I was just reading this article today by Boricua Gatto, the bad cat, who's one of my favorite sort of like socio-political commentators on Substack, and he was talking about the sort of this election being cringe versus based. Based from the sort of little b thing, but based essentially in many, this is my sort of quickest interpretation. Think of your base being wide, literally meaning you're like you're a center of gravity. So you're not easily swayed. Like you know who you are, and you're not going to be swayed by opinions and blah 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 blah. It's kind of an individualistic celebration. And it also means you're going to speak the truth even if people hate it, which means the fault of that element can be I'm going to speak truth even sometimes just so people hate it. And then whereas on the other side, the cringe is much more like, let's everyone get along. It's like the mealy mouthed mommy who's like, in many ways, wants everyone to get along. And isn't that wonderful? We should all be playing together. We should all be having a great time. But then it's also a little infantilized because it's constantly like over hyper aware of like what the group is doing. And so in some ways it's failed the peer pressure test, which at least when we were growing up, and this is one of the weird things about being of our generation, maybe kids aren't raised the same way, peer pressure was vilified on a near constant basis throughout much of our childhood on
Yeah.
like after school programs or Saved by the Bell or even cartoons or whatever. At some point, there was a very special episode where someone had to resist peer pressure. Now, that's fascinating to me because, again, that was from a leftist POV back then. But we're generations away from that now. And it really is kind of the opposite, where it's like you really need to be attentive to the collective because you have to live in this world. And I'm saying it in the positive way because those are true things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I think collectivism is beautiful in terms of a concept like Ubuntu. I am because we are,
Yeah.
like, just that we're connected. I mean, I think that's something you and I celebrate, just the
Yeah.
human spirit, maybe all of life. And yet it's dangerous when we lose the ability to question the consensus, especially when that consensus starts to evoke the same vilifying energy
Yeah.
that we thought we were working to overcome.
Yeah. I just read Animal Farm for the first time in my life. Never read it in high school or whatever, grade school. But I got it from a thrift store for $1 and I read it like last week. So it's so funny. I just read 1984 for the first time earlier this year. And I finally was so sick of everyone calling everything that's happening to us Orwellian and only just having like a vague sense of what that meant. So I finally read those two novels. And it was amazing to me, of course, to then read Animal Farm freshly and then turn to American politics and be like, oh, wow, like we have these same. And that was more of a condemnation of communism from a socialist's point of view. Orwell was and remained a socialist. But he thought communism was basically where it all went wrong. And there's how it went wrong in the realms of authoritarianism or um, and so it was so funny. I screamed at my phone. I was watching a stump speech where you're talking about the internal divisions. There were people who were who were free Palestine advocates. Let's just say that in the simplest way, who were kind of heckling or yelling out over on top of one of Harris's stump speeches. And her response to me was straight out of Animal Farm, where she was like, "Unless you want to vote for Trump, you need essentially if you want to vote, unless you're going to vote for Trump, just shut up." And I was like, she did the "you don't want Farmer John to come back, do you?" Which was a refrain throughout Animal Farm that the pigs who took over used over and over again. It was like, well, you don't want to go back to that awfulness. And to me, that's just fully invites, well, wait, are we better off? Of course, in Animal Farm, they were not better off. They actually were definably worse off at the end of all things. So that to me is like why we always need that great questioning spirit. And it restores my heart delightfully to know that like people are questioning and going, well, this doesn't work and that doesn't work. And to me, I was like, you just have to let it out into the air. Because I think it would just behoove to me as an independent, it would behoove the movement entire to have people watching people wrestling with complexities. Because to me, it makes it more appealing as someone who's a little bit on the outside.
Well,
But
I've never read
go
it. I
on.
think I saw the cartoon version once, but
That'll
appreciate
tell
you
you. That'll give you the
digging in.
beats of it. It's really short. I mean, I read it in a day. It's like hilarious. I was like, why hadn't I cranked this out at some point?
I think a lot of books are too long.
So quite a few of them could be
There's a lot
edited.
of filler out there.
Yeah, gosh, a lot of pages. You know what I mean? You turn a page and there's like more words. You're like, really? Come on. TLDR. All right.
A throwback to one of our earlier episodes. I read the first Harry Potter book, and then the second one is like twice as long. I'm like, come on,
Yeah,
I'm out.
I'll read half of it. I'll read as much as the first Harry Potter book of each book.
There
Maybe
you
I'll
go.
pick the end for the last book. I'll just read the like second half. Although by the end they were like 4 times as thick. Um, all of this to say, hopefully you've already guessed at what our episode topic is. I wanted to kind of leave it deliberately obscure in our intro. I thought that was amusing, but I'm sure for some people it's super frustrating. The argument I kept running into as I've tried to talk anything to do with politics, especially in the United States, and this has happened, gosh, I'd say even more so in the past 2 weeks on a sort of per interaction basis than it had for the past couple of years. Anytime I would come in with criticisms of Joseph Biden or now Kamala Harris, people would, within 2 or 3 interactions back and forths, would be like, well, go, yeah, just go enjoy your MAGA camp, Trump boy. I'm not voting for Trump, and at no point had I given any indication that that's what I'd be doing. But there's this explicit assumption that everyone exists somewhere in one of those binaries, in the bipartisan binary. Now, under that is another supposition that, of course, I constantly question because I'm a literalist, and I was like, well, Trump isn't the only other option, so it doesn't make any sense. You would assume that I'm this other popular option based on no evidence. You know what I mean? But I think that a lot of people on both the left and the right across our spectrum, and including amongst independents, perhaps it's growing, but I don't know, that it is a waste to vote for anybody else but those 2 people. And especially the closer we get to election, the more and more I see it, where people are just like, oh, it's a waste. Like, you're literally throwing your vote away. Or they'll say even the most insane thing, a vote for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a vote for Trump, or a vote for this other person is literally a vote for someone else. Now, of course, that's objectively inaccurate, but I hear that sentiment. I see that sentiment quite a bit. And so I was like, I have to wrestle with that. I have to ask that question on Totally Classic today. Is voting for a third party a wasted vote? My name is Brendan McNamara.
And my name is Andy Swindler, and I love the question. And I feel like a big part of that is the context, because we are a republic and because we vote by state. It matters quite a bit. This isn't, we could easily branch into a whole thing around electoral politics. Maybe that's a whole other episode.
Yeah.
I imagine we'll dance in that a bit for context. But for context, I live in just outside of Chicago in Illinois, a notoriously hardcore blue state. Yeah, which is interesting, as I'm supporting a project where my friend is walking from Chicago to Montgomery, and she was walking through mid and southern Illinois. Even I had to realize my surprise about how much southern Illinois there really is. I was like, oh, I didn't really know.
Yeah, it's a big state. It goes down there. Yeah.
Yeah, below I-70. And confronting our own biases about what that is. And I think she ran into a number of people, the whole point of it, she's talking to all these people who are like, yeah, well, there's Chicago and then there's the rest of the state. That happens a lot, right? In the states that have the biggest metro areas, we're the 3rd largest. That metro areas tend more blue, and they tend to dominate because there's millions of people.
Yep.
And so anyway, in and of itself, again, maybe you can tell us how useful it is in this episode to dig into just the way we're set up. Some people, I have my opinions about the electoral, system, but I just also think you really need to understand how this country was formed as a republic of a bunch of states. It's easy to think, well, that's all just totally nonsense because we're one country. And I'm like, yeah, sort of, but we're actually a republic made of a bunch of states. And that was really, really explicit when we were 13 colonies.
It totally was, right? Yeah. Especially when you like study history, the Union just becomes this like, oh, it's just the name of those guys, right? But both Union and Confederacy are literally explicitly terms of like disparate. It sort of suggests a bunch of individual, if not interests or entities of some sort. A union has to be, it's at least 2 things coming together, and the Confederacy is an agreement of a bunch of different people. So yeah, we're fragmented. Anytime you look at, this is a great thing, we have a big map of the world in our house, and so I think that's very helpful to constantly remember, kind of, A, that we're not the center of the world, and B, like, also look at how big the United States is, like compared to Europe or whatever. So you're like, oh my gosh, look at all those countries. And a lot of people who come from other countries to the US are like, to talk about it like it's just one country is kind of ridiculous. It's giant. It's so big. It's so big, and it changes geographically, so drastically. And then again, from urban points to so from the city to the country mouse. Yeah, those can be wildly different. And our founders specifically were not into political parties or factions. They thought states was kind of enough. I think they sort of, in there, this is my theory, I think in their mind they had something kind of similar to the Greek city-state concept, where like, oh, these people will kind of collectively have shared values by proximity. And maybe in some ways those values would always be shaped by the cities that sort of predominated. And I think that's one of the reasons that we generally don't put um, capitals in the biggest cities, because you see, we already feel like the city already has like undue influence. So they'll shift the capital over there to Sacramento or whatever, or Albany. You've got to, like, it can't be the biggest city because they're already too influential. So you've got to pull government kind of a little bit farther away. So that, we were designed really not to have political parties the way we do, because in some ways I think this is a failure of the system, where you're
Yeah.
like, we're not ruled by royals anymore. We don't just have one choice, we have two. Which, listen, that's a huge leap. I get it. It's a big leap. It's a leap from being like walking on all fours to being bipedal. Like it's enormous to go from one to two is a big change. However, it's sad. It's
Uh,
sad,
uh,
but it's sad and pathetic.
it's a leap unless it's really the same thing, just masquerading as choice.
Yeah, that's,
And
I mean, yeah,
and
the two
and
wings, same bird idea. Yeah.
we live in a plutocracy. I think that's pretty clear. It takes billions of dollars to run a campaign.
Yeah.
And so related to the independent, the challenge of the independent
Yeah.
is, is it always a conflict between integrity and between who's going to fund your campaign? Maybe that's a branch we could go down. The
Yep.
reason I brought up Chicago and Illinois, though, is very germane to the question, right? Because I'm having this conversation with people here,
Okay. Yeah.
people like me who are like, gosh, I don't, it actually doesn't matter who I vote for because I know the state's going to be blue.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's
Electorally. Yeah. Electoral
that's
college
a
wise. Yep.
totally different conversation, maybe than if I was in Ohio or
Yep.
somewhere like
Yep.
any other swing state.
Yep.
And just this I view it as a huge limitation. I was involved with a couple people working on this a few years ago. There's one independent candidate, and even things like ranked choice voting, like how can we even modify the voting system to be a
Yep.
little more, I think, sensible, in actually lifting up the people who are, overall. It's like the way we vote is very binary, right? And there are
Yeah.
ways to designate sort of our, you know, the person who has the most support, even if they're not everybody's first choice, which is kind of funny in and of itself, right? Because I think I was joking with my stepdaughter the other day. It's like, well, look, that's the basic idea of politics is everybody gets their second choice. And
Yeah.
if and maybe we're even lucky to get our second choice. But I think a lot of the point of the question here is how many independents just get completely shut out. Now, this is on the tails of our episode about Kamala
Yeah.
and the DNC basically throwing out the democratic process to nominate
Yeah.
her. So it's like it's hard enough for an independent to begin with, and now you've got it where they didn't even get to they had like the door slammed in their face before they even walked in the room.
Yeah, you didn't even get to try really to be. I mean, to me, that's one of the things that makes this the most intriguing time to ask this question that I ask every single election when I talk to people. I've never won. I've never won alongside a bunch of other people. I think a lot of people view like elections or voting as sports betting, that you're kind of picking like from like, oh, these like who are the two or three most likely outcomes here. I kind of want a long shot enough because I want to be cool and independent, but I also want to like I want them to have something to celebrate on election night, kind of thing. I want to watch the game, and I want to be like in the game, kind of neck and neck. Maybe it's a little bit more like the Olympics, where you're like the whatever, it's gymnastics, right? And you're like, it's China or the US. It's one of those teams. Those are who's going to win. So that's who I'm going to root for tonight because they're the most likely to win. Whereas I look at and always have, really, well, maybe after my first election, I kind of like, all right, let me get real serious about this. Looked at it as who, for a while I did it pragmatically, where I was like, who is the biggest third candidate? Because I would like, because there's for my longest thing, I was just like, I just like to help engage matching funds for third party candidates, because there's all sorts of things built into our system where the biggest parties actually kind of have an inbuilt like mechanism for fundraising.
Right.
Knowing fundraising is important. That's why I voted for Ralph Nader or whatever. So I was like, oh, he has the best chance to get that matching funding, because I think our system would be benefited by having a dominant third party. In the hopes of it being 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever.
So we agree on that. Let's just put that
Yeah.
stake in the ground. We both agree that we'd be better off with more parties.
Yes, yes. Hooray. Yes, we both thumbs up to that. But since over time, especially when I started calling myself a man when I turned 40, I was like, well, how can I be more responsible in everything that I do? In terms of voting, and this has been the last like, so actually even slightly before I turned 40, but around that time period, I was like, I'm going to vote for who I think the best candidate is. And part of me was like, well, wait a second, why haven't I been doing that the whole time? And why wouldn't that actually be the first simplest way to explain a vote? Like if you're going to tell a kid, like how do you figure out who to vote for? You just be like, oh, well, you just like figure out, learn all you can about all the different candidates, and then just pick the one that you think is the best. I think that's how I would explain it to a child. I think that's how I would explain it to an adult. But somewhere along the lines, it turned into, I think because of fear, again, you better join up with one of the big tribes or you're going to get smashed because they are the most likely to take the country over. And if you're not with them or them, then you're out. This is especially now germane also because of then ignoring that, like now one candidate wasn't even chosen by the vote. So we're starting to change the democratic process. And then also we are at a time where independents, in terms of self-identification of the US population, independents are the largest political group. They're bigger than Democrats and they're bigger than Republicans, but only by like a percentage point or two.
Huh.
They're all in the 30s. I think it's like 38 to 35 to 34 or something like that. Please don't exact quote me. I'm paraphrasing. They're all in the 30s though. And the biggest group is independents. So, but it's been that way, I think, for a couple of elections. And yet, when it comes down to the presidential election, for whatever reason, people don't vote what they say they are. So that to me just says, of course, we're a nation of disgusting hypocrites. And if any other country wants to invade us and take over, let's have that conversation.
I mean, if we've proven
However,
anything on this show, that must be true, including us. So,
including us, yeah. So well, here we are. We're in line to be taken over. But other like just using this presidential election as an example, multiple candidates are running and have been running for a long time. And as we talked about last week, have been running since well before. Kamala Harris is like a brand new candidate. She's like 4 weeks old as a presidential candidate. So it'd immediately be like, she's one of the top two. Doesn't make logical sense unless you live in this world of like the binary only, and every vote for someone else is a vote for my enemy, essentially. Whereas every vote that every individual person casts is only a vote for the candidate whom they voted for. That to me is my apprehension. I was like, I don't understand where anyone came up with the idea, Republicans or Democrats, that anyone owes you votes. And that somehow if you do it, you're stealing votes from someone else. It's just like, what are you talking about? Like and I've heard that, like, oh, so you're stealing votes from Harris if you vote for RFK, or you're stealing votes from blah, 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 or headlines all the time from news organizations, RFK running as a spoiler campaign. You're like, spoiling what? Like, we have no obligation to vote for these two parties. We could, if we all just decided as a collective to not vote for Democrats or Republicans in this next presidential election, we're perfectly within our rights to do so. It makes perfect logical sense to do it. We've already said that most of us are independent and don't want to vote for them anyway. Why? I don't understand why people keep acting or speaking as though the binary is all that it literally exists, and it only figuratively exists as long as we pretend it does. That's my point of view, though.
One other piece of context for me is growing up in a just hardcore Democrat liberal family.
Yeah.
And realizing the bias in that that I've carried forward, and trying to, I think part of me interacting with you here is actually trying to bend away from that bias, because it is dangerous. It's dangerous to look at our leaders just through rose-colored glasses and be like, oh God, oh thank God there's a Democrat in the White House. We're good for 4 years. We can just like breathe
we can stop paying attention. Yeah, we can take 2 years off.
Democrats have so much blood on their hands. It's like,
yeah.
Okay. Interestingly, my brother is very, very private about his vote.
Oh, interesting.
And I really respect that. I think that's
yeah,
applies to what you were just talking about.
Yeah.
Where it's like, it is a private matter. I mean,
yeah.
Nobody, I mean, that's like legally true, right? Like, but
yes. Yeah.
and it surprised me at first, maybe even annoyed me a little. And the more I thought about it, I was like, wow, I respect that. And
Yeah, I think it used to be much more. That's like an old school way of being. A lot of people
yeah,
never talked with anyone, coworkers, news. We never knew who like journalists would vote for.
it
Like
feels
it was
more
kind of,
sacred rather than being just
yeah,
the gossipy part of life. It's like,
yeah,
no, I take this as a sacred duty. That's
yeah.
I hold it that way. It's like we
I think
shouldn't
it's
take our republic for granted.
no. I think it's a
Yeah.
pretty. I think it's a pretty sacred thing in terms of sacred in the non-sacred sense, but like sacred amongst things that human beings do.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Fair
I think
enough.
it's very. I think it's really. I think it's very important.
Very, 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 very important.
Yeah, I
I
do.
feel
I
like
think
it's a
it's
five very. Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to like I don't want to lose. I think vote. I think asking people what they think and actually taking it into literal account is like what a one. That's the best. And the cool thing is both the individualists and the collectivists tend to agree on that. So I also like it because it's a point of agreement that we all kind of are like, yes, yes, we should do that. Which again is the why the Democratic Party ignoring that process for primaries is so. I was like, oh, we're in uncharted territory, like next level uncharted territory right now in terms of
So,
like
so,
how people feel about it.
so the argument for, just looking at your outline, the argument
Yes.
for the two-party system is if they're right. Is if
Yeah.
like voting for Donald is we're gonna what's the worst thing? It's gonna be
Yep.
Nazism, communism,
Yes. Well,
warmongering.
yeah.
I don't even know what the worst claim is at this point. We're gonna stock the Supreme Court with
Yeah.
the worst people. We're gonna ruin 3 generations of court decisions. I mean, you name
Yeah.
it. If
Yeah.
all of
Exactly.
those and more were true, demonstrably,
Yeah.
then it's like, oh, good. I'm glad there's a sheriff in town that has the power. Like it's like when
Yeah.
one like mega, mech robot
Yeah.
monster shows up, and then you've got like, oh shit, like we need to build another one.
Yes.
That's the only thing big enough to fight it.
Yeah. Totally.
Um, but there's a lot of ifs in there. I don't
There's a lot of ifs. Yeah. I think it makes sense in the binary of mother and father. That's one of the things that help me understand the two-party system. And I do generally think of Republicans as dudes and Democrats as chicks. And that does play out demographically. Just it's not just an intuitive sense. That's relatively accurate. We're seeing it even more so with younger generations, like 25 and under. Women are like more progressive than any generation previously, and then
and you
men,
mean baby chickens when you say
yeah,
chicks.
baby chicks, yeah, chicks and dudes, yeah, and dudes. I mean, like cowboys on a ranch. No, I think of chicks as like chicks is the female version of dudes, although dudes is a omnigender term, or even you can even use dude to refer to inanimate objects. Whatever. It's a wild word, but I think of it in that sense, and I was like, okay, we understand that tension, and so it's easy for our brain. So I understand that's why the two-party system kind of makes sense, and then also the mutually assured destruction principle, which is they're kind of going to keep us all in balance by both having constantly fighting for power. So they kind of can't get too out of line, or they can't overreach too much, or they'll get knocked out. So they kind of have to stay somewhere near the center. Now, this election, I feel like, has kind of thrown that out a little bit, and that's why I think it's so fascinating this time around because Harris and Waltz are specifically both, at least according to left bias media, are both progressives, which is the smaller. I think I sent a thing to you this week. According to like Gallup polling, progressives are actually the smallest, most therefore quote unquote most extreme, statistically speaking, political cohort in the bipartisan schematic. They're the most extreme on the left in terms of positionally. There's an extreme right that matches up with them, but it's a bigger percentage of the total population. It's like 8%, where progressives are only 6%. They're only 12% of the Democratic Party. But right now we have a two ticket of pretty extremists. And with Trump, Trump and Vance, we actually have a two ticket on the right that are much closer to center, especially I would say on social issues. They've pulled the Republican Party. They've literally changed their platform to be softer on abortion, uh, gay marriage, gay rights stuff, like all of that is all pulled towards the center. So we kind of have a weird, like right center-ish candidate on one side and then super, super left on the other side, which is very unusual. You pretty much like even Biden is not a progressive, like he's like a very centrist. So it's kind of a centrist versus a centrist. But now we have a centrist versus an extremist. And so I was like, we're actually in this really interesting thing as relates to my stability element, which the mutually assured destruction thing, that theory I think is salient, but it doesn't hold as true this election. I just had to make that clear.
Hmm.
I also
Well,
thought it was fascinating to send it to you because I knew you are, I would consider you a progressive. I would label you as a progressive. You probably would label yourself as a progressive. But I
no,
didn't, I
no,
don't,
no, I was I surprised by that?
I had no idea. I was very shocked. I think because I have way more progressives around me personally. So I have a cognitive bias as to it maybe being a much larger percentage than it
Yeah,
was.
I guess I don't know if I let it fully sink in. Yes, that's lower than I would have imagined, especially given who they've picked for the candidate, the
Yeah,
vice
yeah,
president.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. They're not well, and at first they weren't really hiding, but I think again, I didn't know that, and I'm pretty like politically aware. I didn't know how small progressives were until I kind of was like, what percentage of the party are they? I don't under like where do they
Right.
fall on the spectrum? Again, not from my evaluation, because my evaluation is biased by my own like lived experience, but like whatever, Gallup polling in terms of self-identification of those sorts of things, I don't know what would be better data than unless you could hack people's like voting records, you know what I mean? So you'd need anyway, I just thought it was fascinating. I was like, I
No, it
had no
is. And
idea.
sometimes I have to
Yeah,
visualize numbers, and I'm actually imagining
yeah,
10 people standing there, and only one of them is truly progressive,
yeah,
which also begs the question of like, well, what are the other nine? But no, that's stark. That's like, holy crap. Like that's
yeah,
tiny, really, as a percent. And then I hang out with, I don't know, I'm guessing like less than 1% of the, well, not so much anymore, but as we've talked about quite a bit in my more like socialist, mutual aid
yeah,
on the street days, it's like
yeah,
the radicals,
yeah,
basically full on socialists. And
yeah.
that's, I assume, I don't know, 1% or something.
Is it one? Yeah, exactly. So that'd be like one out of 100. Yeah, because 6% is less than 1 out of 10, right? So if you had 10 people there, half that person is half of a progressive. And that would kind of reflect the national average. But even amongst Democrats, yeah, it's like pretty much one person and a little bit of somebody else. So that's fascinating to think about. And then go, oh my gosh, well, how deep am I in that bubble where I'd say like 9 out of 10 people in my collective are that. So then I live in a, I just think it's good for people to know. Same thing with like if you're a super MAGA head and you're just thinking that's normal, that everyone just thinks Trump is like sent by God. You should know, statistically speaking, where it puts you. Like it puts you in like a really small category of people. Likewise, if you're a progressive, you're actually in a really small, um, you're in a small minority of the population and even of the left, like of the Democratic Party, which is fascinating to me. And so
Well, I did wear
again,
my red t-shirt today.
yeah, just to
But
balance it.
But it's actually a Cobra Kai shirt, and I assume there's more people who like Cobra Kai maybe
Yeah.
than are progressive based on those numbers.
It might be. Yeah, any super popular show. It's hard in the streaming era. Um, it's okay. We're both kind of in the miasma of the middle of it. I was like, let's tweak our brains and then go, okay, let's pretend for a moment that we believe in the binary thing, that it's either Republican or Democrat.
Actually, one tiny other
Oh,
little
go,
piece of
go.
context in germane to something you brought up about yourself is I have often voted for a third party, which
Yeah.
again is why I brought up the context, feeling safe to do that in Illinois often.
Yes.
Safe
Yes.
in but even like as you pointed out, that's an odd way to put things. Like, what does that even mean to feel safe?
I know.
Because it's like, well, the person I really want to win is going to win. But the idea that I believe in that we should have a third party is actually what I really want to win. Like that's
Yeah.
that's what I really often am voting for.
Yeah. It's
And
fascinating.
my go-to there is the Green Party, sometimes quite
Yep.
lazily. But it seems
Yep.
like, they're you know,
They
maybe
tend to be, yeah, they tend to be the third biggest.
yeah.
Um, well, yeah, and I lived in California for years and years and years, where it was the same thing, where I was like, there's not even any. Now, people would deny this because I know plenty of people there who feel pressure, but I'm not a suggestible person, enormously so. So I was like, there's no pressure for me to vote for anyone in particular in California, because no matter what I do, typically the president has already been picked by the time they count California's votes. Our votes are just window dressing. They really don't matter. And consistently, it is such a blue state that it doesn't matter. I live in North Carolina now, which is kind of a purplish, or even when they were considering our governor as the VP, the Dems were, they referred to it as a New York Times, I think, referred to it as a swing-ish state. It can every like 3 or 4 years, it like the president might change here. We have a Democratic governor pretty consistently, like always, but
I blame the word
it's purple.
I blame the word like for how approximate our
Every
world is becoming.
everything is now.
Like
Yeah.
everything is becoming ish.
Everything's sort of kind of pseudo.
But I know I've
Um,
had people push back against me here.
yeah.
I'll mention it and they'll be like, you just see the fear come up, and they're just like, oh God, don't, because this could be the time, and it's like,
Yeah. But they
really?
say that they've said that I turned 18 in, what was it, like 96 or something, maybe? I don't remember. Anyway, somewhere in there. And people have been saying that every single election of my life. Just so I know, young people out there, if you're listening, they say it's the most important election of our lifetime almost every single time. That we
Oh my
can't, well,
God.
not this time. We've got to wait till next time. They're liars. They're
Yeah.
liars. They can't be right about every single one. We're like, no, every new election is the new biggest one.
Are there young people listening to us?
Bullshit. I don't know. There are easily dozens and dozens, occasionally hundreds people listening to us. So I have no idea their age ranges. But for anybody who like doesn't know that this is just something that people say every single election, people say it every election. And they're not, this is a great thing is you learn who's not a reliable person. Because if anyone says that to you more than 2 elections of your lifetime, that person is not, this is not their bailiwick. This is like me talking about baseball. I don't know what I'm talking about. They don't know what they're talking about. But what a weird thing, right? To pressure you. I guess because I've never really been in a cohort of people who vote like me, I don't really know what this is like. Like, I don't know what it's like to pick a winner and be all excited on election night. I don't really know what it's like to feel like pressure to do it or the desire to pressure other people to vote like me. Like
Yeah.
I don't, I don't think I've ever. If this, listen, I almost had it this year, but DeSantis did not win the primary. If DeSantis had won the primary, I think this would have been the first time in my life at 46 years old that I would have been like, guys, this guy's a great candidate. You really should vote for him. But even then, I wouldn't be like, you've really got to vote Republican. That's not. I don't think I could bring myself to say that. I would never say you've got to vote Democrat. I would never.
Yeah.
I just would never say it. It doesn't. It doesn't make any sense to me. I was like, I don't, but again, I don't know. I'm not into
Yeah,
identitarian stuff. I don't understand it.
I did some canvassing back in 2004 when I got really active, and
Yeah.
I talked about that. Carrier was everybody's second choice, so it was like weird to
Yeah.
be that active and also be like,
Yes.
meh.
Eh,
But then
eh.
what I really appreciated were the get out the vote campaigns. To
Hmm.
me, that's where the juice really is. It's like,
I
you know
like
what?
that.
I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm just encouraging you to vote,
Get
to actually
involved, man.
participate. Because what
Yeah.
is it? It hovers around 50% participation.
Yes.
Look, do we even think we have a clue what people really want or
You
what
have
they vote?
no idea. Well, that's so much. I think that's why so many people campaign so outrageously now. You
Yeah.
know, is like you're just trying to drive fandom. Can you get can you get the vote out? You know,
Fear is a much snappier marketing tactic than pretty much anything else,
it
as we know.
really is. It really is. So then it becomes about to people who have this presupposition, which I feel like we could just break this. We could break a lot of the presupposition that you have to vote them or us. And people get caught up in that. But I do want to say objectively, it's a lie. Like objectively, it's false. Now, people have some people say it's de facto true, which is way okay, but it's also de facto a lie then. Like as a result of it not being true, there are more than two options. No one deserves your vote. No vote just because you think about voting for someone else and then vote for someone else. You didn't rob the person you thought about. Just like maybe you thought somewhere in your life, there have been attractive women in my life before I was married. And I thought, gosh, you just see someone, they're just so cool and sexy. And you're like, oh man, I want them. But also, I'm a romantic. I was like, oh, I can imagine spending the rest of my life with that person. Just because I thought about marrying someone else before I married my wife does not make it adultery. I didn't owe that woman anything. She didn't owe me anything, right? It was just thinking. And we're allowed to freely think all we want. Now, I know people would like to change that if they could, not allow freedom of thought, but we can. And then it's not a cheat and it's not taking anything away from that first person to go marry the wife that I did marry. So that part to me, I was like, is unassailable in my assumption.
So you
But I
so you
want,
suggested a
go ahead.
beautiful debate club style, let's
Yeah.
argue for each side, which I
Yeah.
is a really like I'm looking at these questions, I'm like, oh, this seems challenging, but it also feels like, wow, what a cool exercise everybody maybe should go through.
Yeah. I'm scared of it. I designed
Yeah.
it and I was like, I don't know how I feel about this.
So let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. So part one, we're going to start. We're taking on one of the great things, guys, about learning and what Andy and I have been doing with each other is trying to take each other's thought patterns on and like really listen. So then you can kind of at least live in someone's shoes while you're listening to them. And so I wanted to do that even for things we may or may not do. And so let's pretend for a moment. Let's say the bipartisan thing is real. And I think the more we examine it and pretend it's real, the more fake it's going to be. That's my theory. Let's see. So, number one, let's talk about why we would vote Republican ticket right now. Like, why would we vote for Trump and Vance? Which might be slightly easier for me because I'm more in the middle and there's things I like about them. Although I'm not going to vote for them. And honestly, I don't think there's anything that they could do that would change my mind and make me want to vote for them. Um, but why would we vote for them like right now if we had to step into the ballot box? And I talk too much, so if you want to go first.
Yeah, it is hard to contemplate sort of works against so much of my upbringing and my social training, which is why it's a valuable exercise. I it's funny, my mind drifts to sort of the personal I don't know, personality virtues of Trump, which
Mhm.
like we just lost half our listeners, even suggesting such a thing, but
or yeah, or 12%.
or we doubled our visitor. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
who knows, right?
but I mean, look, say what you will about the guy. He speaks his mind. He's a straight shooter.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, in so many ways he's connected to capitalism, but I also feel like he genuinely. I don't think he's a career politician. I mean, I feel
Yeah.
like that's the thing about Trump. He's a wild. The fact he's a loose cannon. We saw that in the first presidency.
Yes.
He doesn't respect the office very much. So these are lots of reasons to say why the hell should he be president. But I also think that's why a lot of people vote for him
Yeah.
because politics is we've hinted at a little with the idea of a plutocracy to begin with is oh, he's a billionaire, so it's not like he's like stepping out of that in the context of being rich,
Yeah.
but he's different in the context of like you know what I'm just gonna do whatever the hell I want and through his
Yeah.
own moral reasoning what he thinks is right.
Yeah.
So that I can see virtue in that, you
Yeah.
know. And as we've stated a few times, even on this show, in this episode today, I actually think it's less likely that he will lead us to more wars. And
Yeah.
lots of people assume that's not true because he's a white dude. And I'm like, well, look at the record.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Uh,
to steal yours, um, yeah, the no wars thing is pretty. Now, listen, I hate drone bombing, and he got up to quite a bit of drone bombing during his thing. They've drone bombed Yemen quite a bit, so it's not like they didn't. There wasn't an absence of calamity and destruction, but during his presidency, no new wars were started. I like that. He left office within 2 years. We were involved, funding explicitly and sending arms to explicitly to wars with potential. I mean, let's not front. I'm not even saying this in an exaggerative sense. Both of them have like World War III potential. Anytime Israel like gets up to what they've been getting up to for the past like 6 or 7 months, 8 months now, um, that has potential to listen. Israel always has the potential to blow the whole region up, and it's so oil rich and it's so vital to the because of oil to the sustenance of the entire planet. Big problem. Likewise, Russia is a superpower, and if we keep effing with Russia, Russia could very well be like, "Come on, then, let's go." So both of those are horrifying. So I could, in order to stave off that fear, again, that's fear based. I would be like, Trump would be a better pick because he's more isolationist. I'm not an incrementalist, but if I could imagine myself being a little more of an incrementalist, I could beat down with Trump and Vance on the abortion front. But I specifically despise him for that. So I can't even say that. I'm trying to say this as myself instead of an imaginary thing. My hope, this is, well, because Trump is not an honest person, and a lot of leftists think this too. Maybe Trump's lying. Maybe he's lying about his centrist position, and he actually is an abolitionist. JD Vance said he was open to a national abortion ban, and I'm super down for that. To me, that would be like the Emancipation Proclamation level of excitement in terms of, and even I say that as a libertarian, but I was like, to me, just where killing people is involved. So that's probably why I would vote for them, was in that sense, to like get closer to abolition and then, yeah, and no wars. So I could go in and put their checking. I'm literally trying to picture it though, Andy, and it makes my elbow hurt. Now I have sensitive elbows anyway, but I literally was picturing like filling in the bubble. I was like, yeah, I'll do Trump Vance, and it made my elbow ache. So
Uh,
I know you're a somatic, like you like to pay attention to what the body's doing in stress or
no,
peace or calmness.
I
I
think
had a
it's in my
somatic,
like right shoulder. I'm
yeah,
like,
I had a somatic response in my elbow as I did, and because I started miming it, my hand in a little circling thing. I was like, yeah, I don't think I could do that, but okay.
yeah.
Why would we vote the Democratic ticket now?
Let's shake it off, shake it off.
Shake it off, shake it off, shake it off.
Um, well, as I talked about quite a bit in our last episode, you know, I see virtue in voting identity just because I
Mm,
so believe in popping these bubbles to slightly shift from the idea of breaking the glass ceiling.
yeah.
Um, you know, uh, yeah, I've got my challenges with Kamala, and I really believe in having a woman. And yeah, it would have to be, I don't know, I do find myself thinking, oh, it would have to be a much worse candidate for me
Mm,
um, to slip away from the idea of how amazing it will be to have our first female president.
mm.
Um, and that just feels rife with hypocrisy and compromise and weird shit. But I just feel like, well, let's just burst all the bubbles we possibly can in this generation and then let the next generation actually make better decisions.
Figure it all out with less yeah, with less gray, with less what's the word? Like fog.
Less like, oh, these are all firsts. Like I passed on
Yeah.
that article and it was just the whole, was it from the HuffPost maybe? And it was just
HuffPost, yeah.
the whole damn
HuffPost.
thing was just like, well, she was the first. I'm like, well, you know, and that's notable and laudable in many ways, but it's also like, well, when
Cool.
the fuck are we going to get to a conversation about her policies or what she's going to do? Or, I mean,
Yeah.
no any doubt that she's accomplished. I mean, that's what that's saying. It's like,
She's literally accomplished things. Yeah.
but have accomplishment doesn't not just automatically translate. Anyway,
No, no.
this is why we vote for Democrat. So that's
Yes.
my biggest one. Um, I also, I don't know, as a very progressive person, I think the idea of Waltz is pretty fascinating. I don't know, I'm still pretty
Yeah.
early kind of learning about him,
Yeah.
but so I am in that 12%. So I'm kind of like, oh, that'd be cool to have
Yeah.
a progressive ticket.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I and so funny. I was noticing this in the Republican one too, that I'm trying not to, and this is so fascinating to actually think this way. This is a good part of the object lesson that is. Um, I I was trying so hard not to say anything that wasn't like, well, if I'm thinking bipartisanly, how quickly my brain goes, well, because they're less likely to do this bad thing that
Yeah.
these other people will do.
Right.
Do you already feel that in your brain?
Yeah.
That's a weird thing. And I was
It's
like,
like
geez,
genuinely hard to just sit here and come up with
just the
reasons I'm
pos
really excited about it.
just the positives, not the negatives. My brain
Yeah.
generally goes towards negatives. I think human brains do. But as I was thinking through it, I was like, oh my gosh, wow, this is fascinating. Um, because one of the things I was going to say, I was like, oh, well, I don't want to vote for Democrats because I just want them to be punished. Like, I want to punish the Democrats for their response to the pandemic. Like, I'm like done with Democrats the next 8. And I was like, that's, but then they're saying you're voting for them just because they're not them. That's not why. Like, okay, but of course, this is my bias that this is not wise to be bipartisan. Okay, why would I vote this particular Democratic ticket? Um, I think most tenably because I feel, and this is, see, I'm already doing it, but I feel like they have a strong focus, or well, I don't even. This is the hardest thing. Harris has no position, so I'm just assuming, or no stated positions. Um, she, I think they would be much better in terms of environmental destruction. In terms of there are aspects I don't like regulators, but I do like regulations, if that makes sense. I don't trust the people doing the regulations, but I want us to have regulations on anything that could possibly continue to destroy the environment. Now, I don't have a position on climate change. That'll be a future episode. I don't know. I don't know if it's natural or if we've enhanced it in any way. And I don't feel like the science is remotely clear. And I don't understand the actual individual elements of the science enough to have a position. So that's not what I'm speaking of. I just want to make that clear. What I mean is I just think general environmental protection. The other thing is my hope I would be putting in a vote for using our money if we're going to keep giving billions and billions, trillions of dollars to the government, that they would use that money for good things. helpful things to help people. If I can hold on to that hopefulness aspect, then I would vote for Harris Waltz on the basis of them being likely to divert money to trying to help people. Yeah. Okay. That's my reason.
Well, that's a really good segue into. So now switching to why we wouldn't vote Republican ticket.
Yeah.
And I was saving the environmental one for why I wouldn't vote. To
Yeah.
say, yeah, that's my biggest challenge with Trump is just he doesn't give a fuck about the environment and
Yeah.
trying to close state parks and drill everywhere and all that. And that's look, we can. I really think in his first presidency, I think in some ways confirmed that if you want to put it this way, we can survive a Trump presidency.
Yeah. Yeah. We're all still alive for both. Yeah.
You
For
know,
both.
I
Yeah.
think he stress tested our democracy and it proved to be pretty durable. Um, and but yeah, environmental. I mean, you can recover from a lot of political stuff, and you
Yes.
can argue about who was really impacted and how. But the environmental destruction is much harder to come back from.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the biggest one.
Yep.
And no, I don't like anybody's policy on Israel really, but Trump was the one who actually moved the capital from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem,
Yep.
which at the time I don't even think I understood what that meant. But
Oh,
now I do.
interesting.
Now that's
Yeah.
like, oh, that's dropping an anchor, in
Yeah.
Jerusalem, which yeah, a lot of Palestinians, view as their home and their capital too. So I think that's kind of the center point of the debate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I probably could go on and on, but to me,
Right.
those are the big ones that stand
Yeah,
out.
that makes sense. Yeah, and I wouldn't vote Republican. Really, I would say principally the moment that they lost me in an absolute sense um, was right prior to the RNC in Milwaukee about a month ago. They sort of officially changed their past platform to become, they already were kind of like fake pro-life, and I find that arrogant and annoying, but they literally kind of softened their position on abortion, which to me is like a slavery level issue. I'm not a single issue voter, but to me that is the most important, like government intervention related topic, even more so than pandemic response. So I would not vote Republican because they're not pro life, and they are no longer even pretending to be abolitionist in terms of abortion. And then number two, so I at least have two reasons I wouldn't vote for them. Oh, because Trump specifically, since he's at the top of the ballot, did not resist, did not provide any assistance in terms of lockdowns. Like he started the whole lockdown thing was on his watch, man. Yes, the other people did it worse, folks. You can argue that all they want, but trying to just be like, no, it's just you. He started that. So all of the economic downturn, um, that resulted from that to me betrays his whole any professions of, oh well, I am concerned about the environment, but I'm deregulating in order to stimulate overall growth, which helps the environment long term. When he made that economic decision, I was like, oh, I don't believe your little economic stimulus protectionism thing anymore. I think you're willing to get authoritarian under stress, and so eh.
Without unpacking it too much more, the video I recall of Trump talking about abortion was that he's very pro states' rights.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
still the case? And is that what
yeah.
you regard as, okay, that's the federal government passing the buck down to the states and
It
saying,
is, but then he's also like, he believes regardless of what the state, his personal position is the number of exceptions are far too high for me. The exception of life of the mother. I'm 100%. Let's include that in all of our language. But any other exceptions, I don't like. Rape and incest exceptions aren't ethically appropriate. And then also under his sort of command or his like dominance of the GOP, they've specifically taken abortion kind of off the table. They've significantly deprioritized it. Just coming to the, all they're doing is trying to be centrist. I get it. It's very pragmatic, but I have no interest in voting for someone who would default on anything ethical in view, like in order to satisfy pragmatism. I was like, that's not a
Yeah.
lead. I don't ever want a leader who would compromise on I want a Lincoln, right? I want a Lincoln who's literally going to be people aren't on my side with this. So I'm going to fight them. I'm going to fight people who I work alongside until I can shove an ethical demand through.
Well, it's interesting because if I were to add a third, it might be just Supreme Court choices.
Yeah.
And certainly it's the Supreme Court choices nominations that Trump made that led to Roe v. Wade being overturned.
Yeah.
So was that on a track that you agree with? Or is
No,
that
no,
too sort of vague and in
I
the
don't, yeah, it's too, I don't give him any credit for that. He gives himself credit for that. I don't. Listen, a lot of people didn't like the ruling. I feel like the ruling was due to topple at some point. Um, Famously, Ruth Bader Ginsburg thought it was a shoddy ruling. It was just that it was the boundaries by which the ruling was made rather than the effect of the thing. Because you have to be impeccable. Like you should be impeccable in what you do, whether you think it's a good outcome or not. And it wasn't impeccably done under it doesn't really make any sense for it to be under like protected under
Mhm.
privacy.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not exactly what it is. So to me, no, he does not get. I know some people give him credit for that, and you're like, oh, that's him. People are constantly like, oh, he's playing chess, and everyone else he's playing 3D chess, and everyone's playing checkers. Man, you don't know how many moves ahead of you he is. I was like, oh my, if someone, he
Or
seems like one of
Go.
the most,
I
yeah,
just looked this up. The number of legal moves possible in the game of Go are
yes.
more than the number of atoms in the universe.
I mean, so I guess if you're playing that high level, we're playing some serious atoms. Yeah, so no, I don't give Trump credit for that.
Okay. So why wouldn't we vote Democrat ticket right now?
Yeah,
Uh, hmm. Yeah, we both are abolitionists in our own lanes, and
yeah.
my way of that is the prison system, and uh, yeah, just looking at Kamala's history as the Attorney General and her just general ruthlessness and favoring of, I don't know, I would say authoritarianism in some cases,
Yeah.
uh, maybe attitudinally, which
Hmm.
I don't know. That's like I'm like shy to say that. I'm like, oh, if I say that too loudly, because everybody assumes that Trump
Yeah,
is the authoritarian candidate. She's the good guy. Well, I shouldn't say everybody, but certainly I think the
yeah.
progressives. I don't know. I don't know, but that's not. It's so there's so much. I don't know. It's like I'm so confused because it's like conversations I have in private are so different from like I think what people are posting.
It's
Um,
fascinating, right? Yeah.
so
Well, but recognize, I'm assuming it's happening in your lanes too. People can easily forget how censored social media is. Like I've had true posts, I just posted about it this week, true posts flagged as misinformation, and then you can't share them. So then all of a sudden that reaches thing. I've literally I can click on the insights for any of my things. And if I post about Harris, it can be shared, it can be bookmarked 14 times, shared 29 times, and then the views are about the same as my other things that aren't Kamala related that have been shared 6 times. So something's going on. Like media, the social media world is deliberately censoring and curating algorithmically what we see, which creates
but yeah,
this weird it's just funny when you mention social media. It really does form this impression, and I don't think any of us are immune to it. I'm not immune to it.
I had one full on taken down by Facebook as inappropriate content.
Yeah,
Content. This was a post about a friend's concert, a Latina friend.
yeah.
It was like, oh my God. Like if Facebook is literally for anything,
It should be, right?
what
It
else
is
could it be than
whatever sloppy thing.
talking about cool art my friends are producing?
Yeah,
And
it's weird, man.
anyway, yeah. And
No,
it felt like a violation. Again, like
yes,
it's like,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then it made me just be like, oh, there's a weird tie in here where it's like, why did that feel violating? Why do I have the expectation that, I mean, Facebook's a private company. Like, why do I have any expectations about what the hell they're going to do?
yeah. Why would I assume that they are behaving above board on anything?
And then the other one for me, I mean, I guess I would go back to Israel again and Palestine, but it's like, well,
Yeah,
that's not really a vote at this point. that's not really a reason to vote for or against anybody because they feel like they all don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, in terms of the two major parties, yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
seem
Yeah.
that fundamentally different. Yeah. The only thing is that Harris was president like while this happened, and she has been riding shotgun on funding it, I guess.
Yeah.
Specifically. Like that's I think it's just a brief side note. I think that's actually one of the weirdest things about media coverage right now of the election is that they're almost acting like Harris has all this great name because of all her firsts, but they're sort of pretending like she hasn't been vice president of the country for the past 3 years. There's this weird thing of just like, who knows? It's all hope. It's like we don't know what she's like. She's new. It's like she's been the vice president for 3 years. So everything Biden did, you can pretty much go blame her for. At least you can like kind of be like, well, she's complicit in whatever it is. So that part is anyway, that part is fascinating me. I don't understand it. So I wouldn't vote Democrat, probably pretty obviously, for authoritarian purposes, because to me, everything that happened in the Biden administration, she at least is partially culpable for. So especially trying to do an unconstitutional expulsion of up to 100 million federal employees or federal adjacent federally funded employees, unless they used a private company's for-profit product, and then threatening them from the White House, and then only Democrat cities enacting citywide segregation. Then I was like, I can't vote for you. Now, to be fair to Harris, let me throw this out to folks. Um, she barely talked about it at all during that whole time period. And the one quote I could find after like an hour of searching was that she was like, we shouldn't be vilifying anyone specifically for this pandemic. This is a problem for everybody. So she didn't necessarily speak the same threatening language that her boss did, but I do hold her at least partially responsible. And then she picked Waltz, and I was like, oh, he has anti-free speech things, and so I was like, I cannot vote for people who like are looking to violate the Constitution, the whole job of which is to hold the government back. And so I was just like, I can't get down. To me, it's the authoritarian concern. It's just there's too much there. So I was like, I can't get down with these guys either. So neither. Not vote. I like it was the other one was the second one was so much easier. Why not to vote for these parties? That's criticizing so much simpler.
It really is.
It's very funny.
Well, and
So, oh yeah,
the
go
next
ahead.
question, I have to admit, I don't know much about the other candidates, so you may be flying solo on this one, but I'm certainly
Oh, okay.
curious. What presidential
Buzz.
candidates are closest to your positions?
I know, right? There's aren't how
Actually,
many
it says
quizzes?
positrons.
Oh God, that's on my outline. The closest to your actual positrons. Well, my positrons are emanating in a like probably a 10 to 12 megahertz kind of vibration. So no, but there should be some sort of online quiz, right? I feel like there is every year close to the election that you're like, I can't remember who did one. I remember years ago I did it for one of the state elections where it was so cool. It was like a little flow chart where it's like, do you believe in regulations on environmental thing? And they were like, yes. And they were like, what about, this? No. What about this? No. What about this? And then they were like, at the end, they were like, here's your candidate. I was like, this is cool. Now, of course, how manipulated they literally could just have been funded by whoever that candidate was.
One of
But
the branches was all green and the other was red.
yes,
Well,
yeah,
wait a minute.
basically it just takes you to two choices anyway. Um, Pepsi or Coke, man. Number 7. If I was to do your flow chart, I would say Cornell West is probably the candidate that lines up with the maximum amount of like ethical, positional, policy things. Just offhand. I like that dude a lot, so I'm not voting for him because I disagree with him on a lot of things, but I've always liked him. I've always
I'm a
found him.
fan.
Yeah, I like to hear him talk. I think I like to hear him think out loud. And then for me, I mean, it turns me into a bit of a single issue voter, which I'm totally fine with. Not totally because I had to put an exception on it, but you know what I mean, close enough. Randall Terry is probably who I'm considering the most right now. He's famous as an abortion activist. And he's personally a wreck, so it's not anything I'm committed to. And his website is kind of like Harris's, where it's just like merch and funding. Here's how to give me money. So, but he's probably closest to my actual position. This year is like one of the worst. Like last year, there was like 2 or 3 candidates, so I was heavily considering for months leading up until I eventually voted for Brian T. Carroll, who was like the most in line. But Randall Terry probably at the moment, but I just don't know what he thinks about anything else. Um, so yeah, I'm just saying that this is not an endorsement of him or telling you I am gonna. I was just like, I don't know. I guess
Yeah.
Randall Terry is probably the closest. And then why or why not to vote for number 7. I guess I've already told you my reason to not vote for number 7 is because I don't 100% know really what his positions are on flipping anything, which I don't find very encouraging. It's like, okay, so that's I don't believe it's a wasted vote. I would hope everyone would just get in the ballot box and vote their conscience and not consider like who's going to win the most.
Yeah.
But
Are we going to have debates?
yes,
We are.
yeah. So they were canceled or whatever. Or really, as soon as Biden backed out, then there was no debates on the schedule anymore because that's who had agreed, and they'd agreed in this super annoying way. So I was so excited that they were going to have to renegotiate new debates for Harris and Trump because I think RFK should be there. Maybe more. I would like at least five people up on that stage, if not 7. Sadly, that of course is not what has happened. So democracy dies yet again, a little bit more. So they're going to have one on ABC, I think the 10th, maybe. Am I wrong? I don't know. They're going to have one relatively soon, and then they're pushing for more because the first one they agreed to, I think, is on ABC, which is a bit of a left bias news org. So I'm assuming they would follow that up with like a right bias outlet in order for that whatever sort of biased element of fair could come in across a couple of debates. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
I think in some ways it's unlikely to go well. Is how I feel about it. I don't think Harris is very she either executes herself in a way that is low IQ or she's just not very like hyper intelligent verbally or whatever. Listen verbally. She's just not highly verbally intelligent. She could be intelligent all manner other ways. She's been the attorney general, so enabled to just be able to manage that amount of people is something I've never been able to do. But in terms of speaking, that's not her forte. And Trump is much better at speaking, but oh my gosh, talk about organizing his thoughts. He's flipping terrible at that. So I kind of feel like it's going to be a flipping train wreck, which might make for great television.
Whatever else happens, that's probably true. Well, I am ready to
Yeah.
vote. Is voting third party a waste?
Yes.
You're saying the answer is yes?
No. I'm saying,
Oh,
okay, yes. Are we voting?
yeah.
No, my answer is absolutely not.
My answer is also no.
No. Sweet.
I'm not quite as committed as you are, but I know.
But no, just a solid voting
Solid
no.
filling in of the
Yeah.
circle, not like
Yeah. So that's
smashing through the paper.
Yes, exactly. Not stat. I didn't have to stab my own leg.
You could probably invalidate the punch card,
I know exactly. Then that's way worse than a hanging chad. I want to publicly endorse for the first time, not a particular presidential candidate, but that every human being listening, that you would, for every office that you can possibly educate yourself about, that you would vote who you think the best candidate for the job is. And honestly, consider nothing else.
Please vote.
Wow. Yeah, please vote.
Please,
And honestly,
please.
everyone, please, yeah, please. I even if I hate your opinion, I want your opinion there. Like
Yeah.
I want your perspective. I want your perspective there, and I want people to anyone also listening to stop telling people false things like there are only 2 choices. It's just not true. That's like someone saying your favorite soda has to be Coke or Pepsi, and it's not. I like cream soda.
I like orange.
Spreckers actually, which I don't really get down here.
I could
Specker's
drive
cream soda.
there.
I know
We
you can
drive
get
there.
it like it's local to you.
So
So
good.
yeah. Well, right on. I always like it when we find our way to a point of agreement.
Yeah. Yeah. Please
Not that it makes me
participate.
lovey
Let's
anymore.
do your homework. I feel like I'm often at the last minute scrambling to be like,
Yeah.
so it's one of the reasons I love being on this journey with you. It's an opportunity to do our homework and explore a little bit ahead of time, which you do more than I do anyway. But I'm grateful for that. And let's actually get in the ring together, folks, and talk
Yeah.
about what's hard and not just sort of succumb to fear and
Yeah.
hiding in the corners.
We don't need it, folks. We don't need it. As long as we've got each other, we got the world sitting right in our hand. It's like a sitcom theme. I don't know what that is. I don't know. That's why in my head. All right, Andy, I love you.
Love you.